Hi, welcome back. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. It's going to be a little bit different than usual. As you can see, that first photo that was up on the screen was a side-by-side comparison. And that first photo was a digital artwork that I did in 2011. And it's the character Evie, as played by Natalie Portman from the movie V for Vendetta. It's always been one of my favorites, still is. I just love that movie, and I'm a huge fan of Natalie Portman, so this is just a fun piece to work on. And the piece came up in my memories, and when it popped up, I was like, wow. I remember being super proud of it when I originally did it back in 2011. And now, my skills have come so much further. So I decided to do another version. And honestly, I kind of blew myself away because I don't take enough time to give myself credit for how far I've come and what I've been able to achieve. And I spent a lot of time tearing myself down or, feeling very discouraged and feeling very undeserving of being where I'm at. I feel a lot lately like a pretender. So, because of that feeling, this piece inspired me to do a video on overcoming imposter syndrome. I think it's a really common problem among creators, but it's also something we universally experience as human beings. It's just that feeling that you found yourself in a situation and however you found yourself there, you don't feel like you belong. You feel like you're just pretending. And, you may or may not have all these people looking up to you, expecting you to do these great things. And you just feel like, who the heck am I to do this? And I think a really good example of going through this is just with my YouTube channel itself. I dove in and started doing this without knowing what the heck I was doing. Like, I still don't know fully what the heck I'm doing. I'm limping along and BSing and figuring out as I go. And I think more often than not that most of us as creators are doing that to some extent. We never get to this point where we feel like, I've arrived. Okay, I'm as good as I ever need to be. Because then what would be the point? The whole point is we continue to learn and grow and reach for new opportunities and new challenges and new experiences. And because of that, we're always kind of in a state of discomfort. And it can be really unsettling and frustrating. So that's kind of what this whole video is about. So, totally going to be transparent here. I had recorded this whole video already, and I screwed up with the editing software and basically accidentally deleted all of the recording. And I was really disappointed because I felt like I had poured my heart into it and I had done a really good job and I was really proud. So I'm hoping that in doing this a second time, I can still capture that original feeling and still kind of pour my heart out in a way that is also meaningful and helpful to you all. So here goes. I think before we can really tackle how to handle imposter syndrome, we kind of need to have an idea of what it is exactly. I think a lot of us have experienced it without even necessarily realizing it. So the Oxford Dictionary definition is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own effort or skills. The Psychology Association of Fort Lauderdale, which is kind of random, but I stumbled across this definition that they had, and I just felt like it hit the nail on the head, and it just, I don't know, I feel like it was just the best definition that I had seen so far. And they said, or they defined it as, the fear that others will uncover perceived weaknesses and question your competence the same way that you do. And my understanding is basically just that. It's a feeling that I am not all that I'm cracked up to be. Like, I feel like people are going to figure out and they're going to call me out on it, saying, who are you to be having a YouTube channel? Who are you to be putting your art online? There's plenty of artists out there that are more talented and more experienced and have, better products. And the excuses could go on and on and on, because this is a hypothetical inner voice that I'm competing with. And believe me, my inner voice can come up with all sorts of new and interesting ways to tear myself down. As I've worked through my art journey so far, I have realized that no matter how good I get, no matter how much I level up my skills, no matter how much experience, whatever, that I achieve, I never end up not feeling this at some point. And I've realized that this feeling of imposter syndrome is not going to just go away. So now that we know that imposter syndrome exists and that we experience it, what do we do about it? I ended up watching a TED Talk by a CEO named Mike Cannon-Brookes. And he started up this little company in Australia with a friend of his that he went to college with. And in the beginning, they didn't really even have major expectations. Their basic goals were to not have a normal job and to not have to wear suits to work. And now, it's a hugely successful company in 14 different countries with over 12,000 employees. And he admits that he still, on the daily almost, experiences imposter syndrome. So here we have this guy who's clearly successful. He has a record of being successful. He has proven success, right? And I'm emphasizing that because a lot of us, we feel like, oh, well, we don't have proven success yet. We're not there yet. Okay, but bear with me. People who are on a trajectory of proven success still experience this feeling on a regular basis. He describes imposter syndrome as a feeling that we're already, quote unquote, entrenched in a situation, but finding we're not skilled or experienced enough to qualify for being here. And yet, here we are. He shared a story about how his company had applied for an award, and they ended up winning at the national level. He had a moment where he shared this with the CEO that was sitting next to him from another country who had won at their national level, that he felt that his company didn't deserve to be there. That CEO paused for a moment and then turned to him and said, "I feel the same way." And that was kind of a turning point for him, right? Because he was like, oh, other people that are successful feel this way. And he also recognized that no amount of success means that you will stop feeling this. So basically, this is something we're going to have to contend with from time to time, or sometimes even daily. No matter how successful we are, no matter how many goals we achieve, we're still going to have this uncomfortable feeling that we're treading water and we're just trying to stay afloat. Throughout his TED Talk, and by the way, I highly recommend going back and actually watching his whole TED Talk. It's only like 13 minutes, but I can only do so much to summarize it by taking some key points that were meaningful to me. But really, you should watch it. It's really, really good. But what he recommends over and over is not to freeze. He says, instead, pause. And how can we decide to harness this experience as a force for good? He explained that the most successful people that he knows are able to realize that moment of feeling kind of out of their depth and taking a moment and being like, okay, I'm in this situation, I'm feeling uncomfortable, and I'm feeling like I'm not quite able to achieve what I need to. What do I need to do about it? So for instance, they can ask for help. They can do research, learn about what it is, that gap that's making them feel that lack of confidence, and to just bridge that gap. it's an opportunity to do better and to push ourselves into new situations and new opportunities. I follow a creator on YouTube who goes by the name Struthless, and I'll link below for his videos. But I chose to kind of focus on his video, Why You're Not Successful Yet. And the reason I chose this video was because he mentioned that sometime early in our lives, we form these stories or kind of perceptions of who we are. And sometimes we form this idea that we're the underdog and that other people are meant to be successful, but not us. And sometimes, there's all sorts of reasons for that, right? He uses the example of like bullying, or, maybe you had an older sibling that was very high achieving, or whatever the scenario is, right? Sometimes we come to believe that we're just not as good as other people. And obviously, that's a really negative thing to hold on to and to believe, and especially if we don't even realize that's what we're believing about ourselves. That's the story we're telling ourselves every single day. That inner voice inside is telling us, you're going to fail. You're not good enough. You can't do this. You're just faking it. He talks about how who we actually are is in conflict with who we think we are. In other words, the perception of ourselves, that negative voice, is winning. And we're not seeing that we're actually a capable person who's already had a trajectory of success. We've already done things in our lives that are hard. We've already overcome obstacles. And who's to say that we can't continue doing that? So really, we need to take a moment and realize when it's that negative voice telling us something and not necessarily any sort of truth or evidence-based idea. He describes how we have a choice when we find ourselves in this situation. We can either unpack that uncomfortable feeling and figure out how to overcome it, or we can protect our false identity and self-sabotage ourselves, which is often, unfortunately, what we do. I've definitely done this. I've definitely come to points in my life where I avoid an opportunity, or I, procrastinate on doing something that I've wanted to do purely based on my own negative self-talk. So he uses a lot of real life experiences in his video. And again, I think it's important that you should go back and watch it if you're finding this content interesting, because I, can only do so much, right? But some of his points are, they just really hit home. They're so relatable. And he said the more success we experience, the more haters we're going to have. And you would probably wonder, like, well, that's not a very happy thing to think about. Like, why would you be excited about that? Well, the reason that I thought it was so cool that he brought that up is that it's so true. Like, if you think about it, let's say I'm just like this little tiny YouTuber with a little tiny channel, and I only have 30 people who are really just good friends who are following my journey. Let's say I grow and suddenly I have thousands and thousands of subscribers. Well, probably a good portion of those have subscribed because they're interested. What about the people that just stumble across the video and they hate it? What if they stumble across my content and they don't like my art? It's going to happen. It's inevitable. There's absolutely no way to escape having haters, no matter what. And he said in his video, 5% of people are going to hate your guts, no matter what. So the more success you achieve, the more people are going to hate you. Ouch. However, I will kind of add to that by saying that there's this concept that I've told my kids a lot, where I tell them, okay, think of Picasso and Monet and Van Gogh. Does everybody in the whole world love Picasso and Monet and Van Gogh? No. There is not one single artist in this entire universe who has been or ever will be who everybody will like. It's just not possible. And so, no matter how successful somebody is, no matter how, sorry, my nose itches, keep pausing. Anyway, no matter how successful somebody is, they are still going to have people who just don't like their kind of art. And a lot of those major artists that are household names now, originally when they were, kind of starting their art journeys during their lifetimes, were creating art that other people openly made fun of. A lot of people did not like the Impressionist movement when it first happened. A lot of, traditional artists mocked it. They thought it was ridiculous. They didn't consider Impressionist artists as real artists. And now we know today that that's ridiculous. Like, some of the most famous artists of all time were Impressionist artists. So basically, it just goes to show that there is absolutely no way that you will ever have enough success not to have some judgment. It's just impossible. So we need to just keep moving forward and not worry about the haters and not let them limit what we achieve, because they're going to be there no matter what. And if we can't change that, then what does it matter? We need to just do our art and do what makes us feel happy and fulfilled, and just enjoy this process and not let a single person, a single hater, ruin it for us. So I have a couple quotes that I want to share because they really kind of drive these points home. Michelle Obama says, "I still have a little imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. And that feeling that you shouldn't take me too seriously. What do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts in our abilities, about our power and what that power is." Here's another really good one. Albert Einstein says, "The exaggerated esteem in which my life's work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler." Jodie Foster said, "It was the same way when I walked out on the campus at Yale. I thought everybody would find out, and they'd take the Oscar back. They'd come to my house, knocking on the door. 'Excuse me, we meant to give that to someone else. That was going to Meryl Streep.'" Maya Angelou says, "I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out." And one more. "Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will," by Susie Kassem. In other words, we're not going to beat imposter syndrome. It's going to pop up again and again throughout our lives, no matter how much we achieve. It's a common, normal human experience. And it's something that we experience throughout our lives, no matter how successful we are. Okay, so now that we have acknowledged that imposter system exists, we all experience it, we're always going to, yada, 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 what do we do with that information? So, personally for me, I try to find ways to incorporate positivity into my life in a way that's actually meaningful to me. Like, I really don't like fluffy, rainbows and unicorns, everything's happy, and reframe everything in a positive light sort of, self-care type stuff. Because I think it gets a little unrealistic and a little impractical. So I really like practical, actionable things that I can do in my life to make it just a little bit better. I want to share a story that kind of bridges into how I personally try to manage this imposter syndrome. I enlisted in the military in 2017. I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, and originally I was going to be a linguist. And the failure rate, unfortunately, for being a linguist is really high. And I got put in one of the hardest languages to learn, Arabic. I still love it. It's a beautiful language. I still want to learn. And I learned a lot, but I just wasn't meant to be fluent in just under 2 years. It just wasn't realistic for me personally. So, with that being said, we call it washing out, at least in the Air Force. I think the other branches have similar terminology. So, when you fail a class, we call it washing out. I washed out and I got put into a career field that I wanted in the first place, which is great. I got put into admin, which for me is perfect because I went to business school. I have now at this point a master's in business, and this was right up my alley. So I finally get through the training, and I excelled, right? I kicked butt in my admin training because the linguist training had been so hard and had beaten me down and ruined my confidence. And I was bound and determined to get back on track and prove that I could do this. So I killed it. Through the whole course, I only missed like 2 questions, literally. Through the whole, like all the tests, all the testing material, I missed like 2 points. However, I got told that I couldn't qualify for top grad because I had failed my first tech school. Ouch. To add insult to injury, the person who was awarded top grad had also failed their original tech school and they just didn't tell them. Yeah. Way to go for integrity. Woo. So I could have dwelled on that. I could have elevated the problem. I could have, probably done something about it, but it just didn't seem worth it. Like in the grand scheme of things, who gives a crap? Like nobody's going to care that I got top grad in tech school or not. What they're going to care about is how I perform on the job. Okay, deep breath. Moving forward. Moving on, letting that go. I get to my first duty station, and it is an absolute disaster. So that first unit was rough because the office environment wasn't the best. And on top of that, I found out the hard way that my training that I had gotten in tech school before I went to my duty station was basically useless. It's just really hard to teach an office job where every office is a little bit different. You're going to need some specific skills and processes, and it's just really hard to do a one-size-fits-all course to teach you that. It's really something you have to learn on the job. The hard part with that was that the person that was supposed to be training me was kind of the golden boy and didn't want to give up his tasks and work responsibilities because giving them to me would mean that he had less for himself, and he was shining and he was used to that. He was used to being the golden boy. So that created a really difficult position for me because I was begging to learn. I even went to my leadership and asked for additional training, and they wouldn't give it to me. And ultimately, that wasn't really in my power. I had very little ability to do anything about that specifically. So I really got down on myself. I really fell heavily into a pattern of a lot of negative self-talk because here I'd failed, my first tech school, and then I didn't get top grad at my second tech school, even though I should have. And then I came to this new duty station and I was failing again. And if this is a time that I felt imposter syndrome, or if there's any time that I felt imposter syndrome, it was this, right? So with being in a situation where I didn't have a lot of control over it, I couldn't just quit. I couldn't go to a different job. I had to make do with what I had. So I had to focus on what I did have control over. So sometimes that's just making small daily changes. And for me, I started listening to an audiobook on my commute called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. If you've not heard of this book, it is gold. It is my go-to #1 favorite book for feeling practical self-help. Like I don't know how to describe it. Like, I hate calling it self-help because I kind of cringe a little when I talk about self-help. I'm like, ugh. But it is really, really powerful ideas that are grounded in research. It is research based, and she's made it her life's mission to basically talk about human vulnerability. And so I highly recommend taking a look at that book or listening to the audiobook. It's excellent. But on that note, I was able to make small changes in my life and able to get to a point where I was excelling. I ended up getting Admin of the Year in 2020. Actually, it was 2019, but I was presented with the award in 2020. I also ended up getting quarterly awards, and I also got a unit award for being the NCO of the year. And I wouldn't have done any of that if I had stayed in that negative headspace. And part of changing that is just changing the, drowning out the negative inner voices with positive voices from the outside. Taking in content that is going to lift you up, change your perspective, don't allow you to wallow and, just kind of sit in those negative feelings. So that's kind of like what Mike was talking about earlier about not freezing. You have to not freeze. You have to take a step back and decide, what are you going to do to lift yourself out of this situation? So basically, I'm going to end this, video by saying, I highly recommend that you find small ways, small changes that you can do every day to help yourself change your mindset. Take in positive content. Listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, watch YouTube videos, whatever it is that can help lift you up. I'm hoping this video is kind of part of that for you, and I hope that it's inspiring, and I hope that it helps. And thank you so much for watching. I really, truly appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.